All right, good morning. So, Yinka,
Good morning.
let's start with you first off, because I know that, inclusive rights as human rights is something that you have continued to talk about and advocate for. But in terms of, disability rights, we know that there is a Disability Act. It took 5 years for transitioning. Do you think that there is lack of political will towards its implementation?
I think that's the challenge we have in Nigeria, is a lack of political will. Because when you look at the documentation, particularly Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Act 2018, you look at all the bilateral treaties we are signed to, United Nations Charter Right of Person with Disability, African Union Charter Right of Person with Disability. These are solid materials. These are materials that can actually change the ecosystem. We were really particular about them. But unfortunately, I think that the political will is missing. And as long as that is missing, we're not going to go anywhere. And meanwhile, the population keep increasing. Now, in year 2024, we have 35 million persons with disability. In 2018, we only had around 27. So you see the gap, and every statistic shows that the population of persons with disability will keep increasing. That is because as people age, the possibility of having a form of disability is there. Their eyesight, the weight. So the population of persons with disability will keep increasing, but there's no strategic plan. There's no strategic action to show that we are planning for this influx of population. And if we cannot handle 35 million, who will give us assurance that we will be able to handle 50 million? Because again, it has been said that by 2050, globally, we are likely to have almost 2.something billion. Now we have 1.3 billion globally. Africa had 80 million, and Nigeria had have 35 million. So you see that unfortunately, we see that the population will keep increasing, and we need to prepare. We need the political will to actually work on all this.
Okay, you guys, so that sometimes from your side of things, you have been accused of, probably not narrowing what you really want. When you say inclusivity, where are the key areas? I mean, it's good to have inclusivity in all spheres of life, but what are your key areas where you feel that your members are lacking?
Is, person with disability and inclusion. We're not because if you look at inclusion or inclusivity is a wide gap. But you know that sexual orientation is part of inclusion that people are clamoring for globally. But in Nigeria, the law had not allowed that. So different sexual orientation is part of inclusivity. Gender is also, particularly the female gender is also part of inclusion. But we are focused on disability and inclusion. People who somehow, by virtue of either accidents, health issues, they have some form of physical disability. It doesn't have to be physical, but some form of disability. Let's just say that.
Yes.
Because if we say physical disability is not the right thing. Yes. We have 6 clusters of persons with disability. So it's not only physical that we're talking about. We're talking about visual, we're talking about hearing, we're talking about intellectual disability, and all of them. So when you talk about disability inclusion, we're looking at 6 clusters of people, which include, like I said, mobility, hearing, visual impairment, person with albinism. We're also talking about the little people you call to have, and about 6 or 7 of them. So there are like 6 classifications within the Disability and Inclusion Society. And the intellectual, each of these clusters too, they also have subgroup, because when you look at vision impaired, you can have people who are technically blind. You can also have people of low vision, and you have people that is color blind. And when you talk about even mobility impaired, we are talking about people who are zero mobility, that is, they cannot walk at all. There are people that can walk with the aid of crutches and all that. So within each cluster, there are also subgroups. When you look at intellectual disability, we are looking at autism, the mental health issue. We are looking at Down syndrome. We are looking at so each of these. So it's when you are here that actually understand that it is not just 6 clusters that we have. Each of these clusters also have sub-clusters.
Sub-clusters.
So when you look at all this, I think it's a huge population that we cannot afford to overlook or
neglect.
not plan for.
Absolutely. Let's bring it back here to the studio. We'll come back to you in a moment. So please just listen keenly, Yinka.
From what you said and what Chioma said, I see a lot of similarities in the plight. I mean, that both you both face. But what I think pricks me the more is perhaps the need to bring this conversation to the grassroots, because a lot of the conversation seems to be taking place in the cities, where perhaps the population of people that we're talking about are pretty few. What are institutions like yours doing to try and take this conversation to the grassroots level? Chioma said something about the need for feeder to do that, and which they're looking at. What are organizations like yours looking at to bring the conversation to the grassroots, where most of the people are?
Okay, let me first of all appreciate Ms. Chioma for her contribution. But you see, the challenges with women with disability is much more than the challenges women without disability have. We are still, if a woman with disability, without disability is talking about sexual health reproduction, violence, and all that, it is nothing compared with what a woman with disability goes through. Nothing. The gap is far. And that's why I need to make clarification that when you even talk about disability and inclusion, you cannot afford not to talk about gender, because majority of women, and statistics has also shown that there will be more women with disability than men with disability. And the fact also remains that even within the disability community, women suffer more than men. So I just want to make that clarification. But more importantly, what we do at now is we're not just urban center organization. We hold local and stakeholder meetings in terms of policy. We engage with policymakers at the local level, at the state level now. We've not even started with the national level, even though that is important. But we think that in most of the local, the pressure and the injustice for persons with disability at the local level, if you are educated, that helps you a little. The majority of persons with disability, either male or female, who do not have education, they go through hell, because a lot of things are denied them. Their right to education, their right to health, particularly women with disability, right to reproductive health, rights to every other, in fact, right to marriage. You see the kind of assault that they go through. You two want to marry, as if they are not actually human beings. Who gave you belly? Even within the medical setting, you find that kind of insult to a person with a woman with disability, as if being a woman with disability nullifies you from having the reproductive configuration of what a woman should be. So what we do basically, we take the conversation to the local community more than at the national level. What also we just discovered recently in one of our field trips, we discovered that person with intellectual disability, it is their parents that take care of them more. They are not it's not the person that is impaired. A woman was bitterly complaining of drugs is so expensive to come with, and nobody is supporting them, that it got to a time that some of their group begin to poison the child with autism or whether Down syndrome or whatever, because because of the money that is required. She even said that being a woman that has a child with palsy is so difficult, particularly in one of the states, I will not mention it, that you will have to meet with your doctor maybe every two days or sometime, that employers don't understand that. So that's why we're talking about reasonable accommodation. In normal environment, particularly in advanced environment, there are reasonable accommodation for a person with disability, and they are the family that take care of them, because particularly person with intellectual disability, that's one of, because they majorly rely on either their parent or their family member. And so we take the conversation to the local community, we discuss with them, we see the challenges. Sometimes I want to wait, because there's a limit to what we can do.
Okay, let me come in here for want of time, because this is a very critical area that you've just raised, public health systems. I remember sometime earlier this year, I did some work with Site Savers And we were able to look at 255 facilities in Kaduna State, and I think 80% of them were non-accessible, and didn't have well, in terms of ability to interpret and to relate with persons without sight or persons impaired by hearing. There was no trained, personnel on ground. And those were some of the issues that they mentioned. That we may be looking at a place where we need to have conversations with perhaps health practitioners and the government to look at providing equal space and accessible spaces in health facilities. Isn't that something? Because you've mentioned about sexual and reproductive health rights. And without, equal or accessible public health systems, this will be a far order. So how do you begin to step down that conversation?
We had conversation with some social workers, because we know that in Nigeria now, most of our doctors are not trained in sign language or how to communicate with persons with disability. Unfortunately, that should be the role of social workers that are engaged with paying the hospital to take care of them. Also, their rights are being violated daily, because if you're a person with disability, you are not supposed to be on queue. You know that when you go to a public hospital in Nigeria, is a whole day affair. And therefore, people get there by 5:30, particularly in tertiary hospitals. People get there by 5:30, 6 o'clock, 7. And then the long queue is there. Unfortunately, the right of person with disability that when they come, they should be treated, they should have a special treatment where they're not supposed to be on queue. Number two, when you even talk about accessibility, most of the people who actually believe in accessibility, they think about ramp alone.
Yeah.
What is the standard of that ramp that they even have? That's another question for another day. We keep saying that it appears that our government is concentrating only on mobility challenged persons, and they think that it's only ramp. What about visually challenged persons? Are there prompters that tell them that, oh, you're about to hit a wall or something? Are there for the hearing impaired? Sometimes, in fact, for the visually impaired, they complain that when they go to hospital, the doctor talk to their aides. And that is really dehumanizing for them, because they are the one that is going through it. And they don't talk to them as if they are not human beings.
Okay, sorry, Yinka, I'll just have to cut in there. We've been looking at recognizing inclusive rights as human rights in Nigeria through the eyes of our guest, Yinka OlaitO, the Executive Director of the Center for Disability and Inclusion in Africa. Thanks for both of you for your time and useful insights.
All right.